Shalom, Israel. Grace and blessings from God the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ be unto you. All praises to the Most High that we made it another week to another Sabbath day. And of course, I want to start by giving all praises, honor, and glory to the Heavenly Father. I do so in the name of His only begotten Son, and I do so by His Holy Spirit, without which we would not be able to give the word or sense of the word or any understanding whatsoever. All right. So with all that being said, I do want to check and make sure everything is functioning properly. Make sure y'all can see and hear me and all that kind of good stuff. All right. So let me check on my live on YouTube. Make sure y'all can see and hear me and all that kind of good stuff. All right. So let me check on my live on YouTube. Make sure. Okay. So I don't know. I guess I'm just so used to being with that mic that it was a lot lower than this mic, and obviously this is a lot closer. And all that kind of good stuff. All right. Okay. So let me check on my live on YouTube. Okay. So all praises to the Most High. I already put it on silent, I believe. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that down. So I didn't see too much in the news this week other than what I'm covering, which is the whole Iran situation. Iran. I believe it's Iran. I believe that's how they say it. But yeah, because there's been other stuff going on this week. I've been concerned with that are like more personal issues, like within the family and whatnot. But all praise to the Most High. Everything's going well on that front. Prayers have been answered. So praise the highest, praise the Most High for all that He has done. He's done wonderful works. His mighty hand is known. He always delivers. He always shows me personally, the things that He is capable of. Anytime my faith may even begin to think about wavering, He always comes through. He always pulls through. So all praises to the Most High for all things that He has done, that He has shown and given. He certainly blessed us more than we deserve. I'll certainly say that any day of the week. All right. But concerning this Iran situation, one thing that I've seen that I'm not going to cover this week is that there have been rumors circulating around the Pentagon, circulating around military officials that Trump and B.B. Milikowski, what he changed his name to Netanyahu. They intentionally did this to Iran because they want to bring about Armageddon and the return of Christ. All right, they did this intentionally, not because they love Jesus so much. All right, but when you look at these Israelis and the way that they think they can fight and overcome God, which is just foolish. But that's how a lot of them think. And that seems to be the pride and the arrogance here, to think that they can do all this wickedness that they've done and just receive no judgment. All right. And like I said, I'm just gonna get into. It's actually going to be the history of Iran this week. I don't know if y'all see them tabs that I got pulled up. We're going to talk about what's happening currently, a little bit about Milikowski's campaign against Iran throughout the decades, because it's not a recent thing. It's something that he's done consistently, just lied, and we'll get into that. But then just do a full-scale deep dive. Well, I say deep dive, as deep as I go on these lessons, because they're an hour long. I try not to go too much over an hour. But obviously a full-scale deep dive of the history of Iran would take weeks and weeks and weeks. I'm not necessarily going to go that deep, but as far as talking about the origins of these people, where they come from, because it's not just one people in Iran. But anyway, I'll get into that later. All right. Let me bring this down and we can go ahead and get started. Yeah, that's fine right there. All right. So I'll start with this because I didn't know what DW was. I was like, is that the Daily Wire? What is DW? But that's German. It's Deutsch. Deutsche Welle is international news from Germany. All right. So it says Iran war. Israel launches broad scale strikes on Tehran. That was updated an hour ago. All right. There may be more updates if I reload. No. That was published 2 hours ago. Updated 19 minutes ago. So that was the most recent update. But the state of Israel is doing more strikes on Iran as we speak. All right. It said Israel has conducted more attacks on Tehran, which is home to over 9 million people in the city proper. It said Israel launches fresh strikes on Tehran after Iranian missiles fired at Israel. Iran says at least 1,332 Iranian civilians killed so far in the war. Trump says Iran must commit to unconditional surrender. And Germany's MERS, I don't know what MERZ is, an endless war is not in our interest, right? So obviously they're looking from Germany's perspective as well because it's a German news site. But it says Saudi Arabia intercepts 4 drones. A spokesperson for Saudi Arabia's Ministry of Defense said the Gulf country intercepted 4 drones. So the spokesperson said the drones were intercepted in the Empty Quarter Desert in southern Saudi Arabia. The defense ministry said the drones were heading towards the Shaiba oil field, or Shaiba, I don't know how they pronounce that, which is on the northern edge of the desert. All right, so, and I had heard that when Iran first started retaliating, they did target some, Saudi Arabia, or Saudi Arabian, Saudi oil fields, right, which doesn't surprise me at all because that's what they were doing when they struck Dubai, when they struck the UAE, when they struck Bahrain. They were targeting business centers mostly. Some American military sites as well, but mostly business centers, right? Because they know that's what Americans and the Israelis are really concerned with is business endeavors. So the U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent, tonight will be our biggest bombing campaign. In an interview with U.S. outlet Fox Business, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said, tonight will be our biggest bombing campaign in Iran. We'll do the most damage to the Iranian missile launchers, the factories that build the missiles. Bessent said, we are substantially degrading them. Trump and Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth have both suggested that the U.S. military has not yet launched its biggest attacks on Iran, right? So this is only escalating. It's not diminishing. It's only escalating. All right. Trump shows interest in deploying U.S. ground troops in Iran. The U.S. outlet NBC News reported that Trump has privately expressed interest in deploying ground troops in Iran. The NBC report was based on information from unnamed U.S. officials, right? So anonymous officials. The report that Trump would not deploy the troops for a ground-scale invasion of Iran, but rather on the idea of a small contingent of U.S. troops that would be used for specific strategic purposes. The report added that Trump talked about deploying the troops when it comes to his vision for a post-war Iran, where Iran's uranium is secure and a new Iranian government cooperates with the U.S. on oil production. All right, gotta get that oil. In response to the NBC report, White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt said the article is based on assumptions from anonymous sources who are not part of the president's national security team and are clearly not read into these discussions. With Caroline Leavitt, you never know because she'll lie right to your face and then the truth will come out and she's like, well, that's what I said. I'm like, no, that's not what you said. Well, what I meant, you know what I'm saying? You never know with her. Iran rejects Trump's insistence that he play a role in picking Khamenei's successor. Iranian ambassador to the UN, Amir Saeed Iravani, strongly condemned U.S. President Donald Trump's comments that he should play a role in picking the successor to assassinated Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, right? Because in them strikes, they had killed a lot of top Iranian officials, including their Supreme Ayatollah leader, all right? Iravani said Trump's remarks constitute a clear violation of the principles of non-interference in the internal affairs of states and enshrined in the Charter of the UN, right? So, Iran saying, like, straight up, the UN says you cannot do this type of stuff, as if the state of Israel and America listens to the UN. Iran is a sovereign and independent state. Iravani said it does not accept and will never allow any foreign power to interfere in its internal affairs. The selection of Iran's leadership will take place strictly in accordance with our constitutional procedures and solely by the will of the Iranian people, without any foreign interference, he continued. Trump suggested that he envisions a situation in Iran similar to that in Venezuela, right? He said he didn't kill Maduro. He just kidnapped him and put him in New York, I guess in a New York prison, maybe a holding cell for his trial. The U.S. military in January conducted an operation in Venezuela where they captured President Nicolas Maduro and brought him to New York to face criminal charges. Trump then backed Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez to succeed Maduro, who has allowed the U.S. to sell Venezuelan oil. Right, so they didn't even replace Maduro's regime. They just let the vice president take over. All right, and Trump's like, hey, just let me get at that oil, and he's like, let me get at that oil, and you can stay in power. So that's what happened. The U.S. president has said he is against Khomeini's son, Mojtaba, becoming the next Iranian supreme leader. Trump has not hinted at who he would find suitable for the office, because I assume, I could be wrong, but I assume Trump doesn't really know anybody about, or doesn't really know about anybody that could succeed, Khomeini and be favorable to him. Israel begins broad-scale wave of strikes on Tehran. The Israeli military said it has begun a broad-scale wave of strikes on Iran's capital, Tehran. The attacks came after Iran fired a round of missiles at Israel. Iranian state media then reported a blast in western Tehran after the Israeli military announcement. The latest fighting comes as the U.S.-Israel war with Iran enters its second week. And this, I guess, would be the first little bit that they put out here. Yeah. So this is the first little bit that they put out here. It says, welcome to our coverage of day 8 of the U.S.-Israeli war against Iran. Before we dive into what's happening on Saturday, here are some of the most important points from Friday, right? Because they're several hours ahead of us. So they're already into, we're into the Sabbath as well, but they're already into, what the world calls Saturday, right? No deal with Iran without unconditional surrender, Trump says. U.S. President Donald Trump said in a post on Truth Social that Iran must surrender unconditionally as part of any deal to end the conflict. After surrendering, Trump said Iran must select a great and acceptable leader. All right. And we've seen the response to that, further up in this article that, Iran was like, we're not going to pick a leader that's acceptable in your eyes. We're going to pick one that, the people of Iran want, or the, quote unquote, the people of Iran want, right? I don't know what Germany's MERS is. Chancellor Friedrich Merz. An endless war is not in our interest. The chancellor said that an endless war is not in our interest. He warned that such scenarios could have far-reaching consequences for Europe, including for security, energy supply, and migration. Right? I've never heard of Friedrich Merz. I don't know when the German elections were that that Angela Merkel either lost or could no longer run in. That was the last, maybe she's the prime minister. I don't know the difference in the German government. Y'all forgive me. I don't know the difference in their president / prime minister / chancellor. I don't know. Brent crude oil prices spike above $90 as the war continues. Oil prices jumped above $90 or 77 pounds on Friday as the war continues. The European Central Bank could raise interest rates to combat energy-driven inflation amid the conflict. The war has disrupted oil shipments from Middle East oil producers through the Strait of Hormuz, right? Because Iran started bombing all of those, Persian Gulf areas, right, where a lot of business was being done. So it's either Iran has specifically taken over the Strait of Hormuz, or people are just scared to come through there now. It says Iran's IRGC says it targeted U.S. base in UAE over attack on girls' school. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps said it targeted a U.S. base in the UAE. The IRGC said the base was used as a launch pad to strike a school in southern Iran, killing at least 175 people, including many school children. Right, and we know the state of Israel doesn't really mind killing children. Right, it's what they've been doing in Gaza for the past couple of years. Israel hits over 400 targets in one day in Iran. The Israeli Defense Forces said its Air Force hit over 400 targets across Iran on Friday. The Israeli military claimed the targets included ballistic missile launchers and Iranian drone storage facilities. All right, Iran's UN envoy says 1,332 Iranian civilians have been killed. Iran's UN ambassador said at least 1,332 Iranian civilians have been killed 1 week into the war started by the U.S. and Israel. Thousands more have been wounded, the ambassador added. Lebanese health ministry, over 200 killed, nearly 800 injured in Lebanon. The Lebanese health ministry has said at least 217 people have been killed and nearly 800 wounded since Israel and the militant Shiite group Hezbollah began fighting on Monday. So I didn't even know things had kicked up again with Hezbollah. I figured, they've been fairly consistent because they've been fighting Hezbollah in Lebanon for a while. The hostilities have caused mass displacement in Lebanon. But, of course, it would kick up when, they started this war with Iran as well. But, so that's what's going on currently. Let's talk about recent history with Bibi Milikowski. All right? Because this guy is not Netanyahu. He changed his name because Netanyahu means gift of God. So I'm not going to call him God's gift because he's not. All right. His name is Milikowski. All right. That's his last name. He changed his name for it to sound more Hebrew. All right. It says the history of Milikowski's rhetoric on Iran's nuclear ambitions. Israel's Bibi Milikowski has warned of an imminent threat from an Iranian nuclear bomb for more than 30 years. All right, so if y'all didn't know this, he's been lying on Iran for over 30 years. All right, look at what he's got here. He's got a bomb up here. So it says he shows an illustration as he describes his concern over Iran's nuclear ambitions during his address to the 67th session of the U.S. General Assembly at the UN headquarters on September 27th, 2012. This was 2012. All right? Yeah, this was 2012. He said, look, they're up here. They're at the final stage. They're 90% done with the bomb in 2012. But anyway, for more than 3 decades, a familiar refrain has echoed from Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Milikowski. Iran is on the verge of developing nuclear weapons. All right? He's been saying that for 30 years. Oh, they're going to make nukes. They're going to make nukes. Since 92. Since 1992. When Milikowski addressed Israel's Knesset as a member of a parliament, as MP, he has consistently claimed that Tehran is only years away from acquiring a nuclear bomb. All right? Within 3 to 5 years. We can assume that Iran will become autonomous in its ability to develop and produce a nuclear bomb, he declared at the time. So he said 3 to 5 years. All right? The prediction was later repeated in his 95 book, Fighting Terrorism. So 3 years after he said this in 92, he repeated that lie. He said another 3 to 5 years, and they can have a nuke. All right? So 3 years from 95 would have been 98 when I was born. They did not have no nuke whenever I was born. All right? The sense of imminent threat has repeatedly shaped Milikowski's engagement with United States officials. In 2002, right after 9/11, he appeared before a U.S. congressional committee advocating for the invasion of Iraq and suggesting that both Iraq and Iran were racing to obtain nuclear weapons. The U.S.-led invasion of Iraq followed soon after, but no weapons of mass destruction were found. So you remember that? Remember when Bush come out and was saying, hey, they got nuclear weapons over there. Colin Powell was like, they got yellow cake uranium. We gotta go into Iraq. No weapons of mass destruction were found. All right. In 2009, a U.S. State Department cable released by WikiLeaks revealed him telling members of Congress that Iran was just 1 or 2 years away from nuclear capability. All right, this boy who cried wolf at this point. He was crying that back in 92. He said, oh, no, I know it's been 17 years since I first said this, but they're only just a year or two away at this point. 3 years later, at the UN General Assembly, Milikowski famously brandished a cartoon drawing of a bomb. That's what we just looked at. To illustrate his claims that Iran was closer than ever to the nuclear threshold. By next spring, at most by next summer, they will have finished the medium enrichment and move on to the final stage. He said that in 2012. He said, oh, they're so close, you guys. Oh, you just don't even understand. And by 2013, 2014, they're going to have a nuke. Now, more than 30 years after his first warning, Israel has conducted attacks against Iran while Milikowski maintains that the threat remains urgent. If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time, he argued recently, suggesting the timeline could be months, even weeks. Oh, I know it's been 30 years since I first said it, but we're just a couple weeks away now. These assertions persist despite statements from the U.S. Director of National Intelligence earlier this year. Now, this article was written in 2025. June of last year was this article written. All right, but they were weeks away. They don't have nukes. These assertions persist despite statements from the U.S. Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, in 2025. Said Iran was not building a nuclear weapon. She said, Bibi don't know what he's talking about. All right, Iran don't got nukes. All right. For Milikowski, the message has scarcely changed in decades, a warning that appears to transcend shifting intelligence assessments and diplomatic developments, right? Because he's always out here crying wolf. Ain't no wolf showed up yet. All right. So there he goes. That was in 96 before Congress. This is with who? This is them meeting with the Russians to try to turn them against the Iranians. This is anti-Bibi sentiments in his own country because they don't like him over there in the state of Israel either. They think he's a warmonger and a war criminal. They want him out of office. All right. Here he is at AIPAC. And this is appears to be before Congress. In 2015. All right. And there's what he said. The greatest danger facing our world is the marriage of militant Islam with nuclear weapons. That's his talking point he has on the sheet there. All right. So talking about Iran with nukes here in 2018. All right. Just ridiculous. Just ridiculous. All right. So let's get into the history of Iran. So Iran's got a very long, storied, and somewhat complex history. All right, because it's not just one people over there, and this is one of the oldest places, one of the oldest countries ever. Right, it's like as soon as the flood ended, you had people in Iran, basically. All right, and I'm going to get into that. All right, so let's start up here. Let's start up here at the top. It says, the history of Iran, also known as Persia. Let's keep that in mind. It's Persia. All right. The history of Iran, also known as Persia, is intertwined with Greater Iran, which is a region encompassing all of the areas that have witnessed significant settlement or influence by the Iranian peoples and the Iranian languages. Right. Notice I said Iranian peoples. There are multiple peoples that live in Iran. All right. It's like 90 million people. All right. So there's a lot of different races of people in there. All right. So like Greater Iran would be like all of Central Asia, basically. All right. Central to this region is the Iranian Plateau, now covered by modern Iran. The most pronounced impact of Iranian history can be seen stretching from Anatolia, right? So that would be Anatolia would be like Turkey in the west to the Indus Valley in the east, right? So it stretches all the way from Turkey and the Caucasus and Mesopotamia, all the way over there to not quite India, but Pakistan, all right? That general region, all right? Indus Valley, including the Levant, Mesopotamia, the Caucasus, majority of Central Asia, all right? It also stands in connection with the histories of many other major civilizations, such as India, China, Greece, Rome, and Egypt. Tradition recorded in the Story of Civilization notes that the name Iran Vuja was used about 12,000 years ago, right? So some of these numbers are butchered, right? Because we know that, I mean, if you know the Bible, you know that the 6 days of creation was like 6,000 years of creation, right? So that was about when the world was being created, was like, that's about the time where God said, let there be light, all right? Was 12,000 years ago. And that Iran was originally known by this ancient designation, reflecting the deep antiquity of its cultural identity. All right, so I'm going to skip around in this article, and I do want y'all to understand, and I always have to say this, the disclaimer here that Wikipedia is not a source, it is rather a collection of sources. So understand that. I know that this information is subject to be incorrect. Y'all keep that in mind. All right, it is the easiest. As I said, it's a compilation of sources. All right, so some of the sources may be correct, may be incorrect, but the fact that it is a compilation of sources is why I use it. All right. So let's keep going. Like I said, I'm gonna jump around, but I'll read this first part just so we got it. It says Iran is home to one of the world's oldest continuous major civilizations with historical and urban settlements dating back to the 5th millennium BC, which, no, again, like that would have been before. When it comes to, like, that would have been pre-flood, so, like, it's a bit murky, right? We're just going to be talking about, like, post-flood civilizations, all right? Because everything pre-flood is pretty much a mystery, unless you're just talking about, you know, what the scripture says concerning like Adam to Noah, which it doesn't say much, but you know, that's the stuff we can talk about pre-flood. Everything else is, like I said, murky just because we don't have that information. So we're just going to be talking about like post-flood stuff. The Iranian Plateau's western regions were home to the Elamites. So keep that in mind. Elam was the progenitor of the Persians. All right. So I'm going to jump down, because we're going to get into we're not going to get into like the prehistoric stuff here, because like I said, date back to 100,000 years ago, which you can't prove or disprove anything from 100,000 years ago because there's no way to confirm or deny that. I mean, you can deny it. I do, just because, you know, it's not biblical, but like there's no way to confirm something from 100,000 years ago. They say, well, these rocks, you know, like, come on. We found a tool in the rocks. Like, come on. That don't mean nothing. So even like, it says this Neolithic. These are interesting. The Neolithic to Chalcolithic. It says early agricultural communities, such as Chogogolan in the 11th millennium BC. So the 11th millennium BC, very, very, very old, because it's not even like again, that's more like pre-flood, right? Instead, there's 10,000-year-old human animal figures, 7,000-year-old settlements, yeah. But anyway, Bronze Age is really what I wanted to get to. The Kura Araxes culture, all right, circa 3,400 BC to around 2,000 BC, which even that. The flood was about 2,500 BC, thereabout, all right? Because you have Christ, obviously, was about 2,000 years ago. 1,000 years before him was like the days of David and Solomon. And 1,000 years before that was like the days of like Jacob, all right? If you add up the timeline of all the events that happened between Jacob's days to Solomon's days is about 1,000 years. And a few hundred years before that was the days of Noah. All right, so about 2,500 BC was the flood. All right, but anyway, the Kura Araxes culture, it says, stretched from northwestern Iran up into the neighboring regions of the Caucasus and Anatolia. All right, so this Kura Araxes culture is Japhetic. This is the forefathers of the Medes. All right, the Kura Araxes. It's the Japhethites who come off the boat, come off Noah's Ark, and they settled in that general region of what is now Armenia. All right, up into the neighboring regions of the Caucasus and Anatolia. Susa is one of the oldest known settlements of Iran and the world. Right, so Susa is what the Bible calls Shushan. All right, The general perception among archaeologists is that Susa was an extension of the Sumerian city-state of Uruk. All right, so very, very, very old. All right, Susa was around during the days of Uruk. This is not the same city as Ur of the Chaldees, but it's around that general vicinity. All right, Sumerian city. Hence, incorporating many aspects of Mesopotamian culture. In its later history, Susa became the capital of Elam, which emerged as a state founded 4000 BC, which it didn't, because 4000 BC would have been before Elam was ever born. All right, but let's keep going. There are dozens of prehistoric sites. All right, and this, what does it say? There are dozens of prehistoric sites across the Iranian plateau, pointing to the existence of ancient cultures and urban settlements in the 4th millennium BC. One of the earliest civilizations on the Iranian plateau was the Jiroft or Yeroft culture in southeastern Iran province of Kerman. Right, so the Yeroft culture. Well, it doesn't show it. Kerman. Well, it doesn't even say, or it doesn't even show. Rather, I was hoping to show it, but it doesn't even show. But it does say present day Sistan and Baluchistan. All right. And Kerman provinces of Iran. So again, southeast, that's more towards, let me show you the map up here. It's more towards down here, all right? More towards Pakistan, all right? Down in there. That's where Baluchistan is. Let's keep going down. All right. So Giraffe would be like one of the Giraffe civilization would be like one of the children of Joktan. All right, one of the children of Joktan. I'm going to get into that. Let's get into those scriptures real quick about all the origins of these civilizations. And then we'll get back to talking about the history of Iran. All right. Because again, Iran stretches from the Caucasus and Mesopotamia to, damn near India, which, Pakistan and all the Istans. All right. So let's get this here in Genesis 9. We'll start with Genesis 9 because I want this prophecy right here. I want to show this prophecy. And I talked about this when talking about the Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Right? I talked about this here pretty recently. And I'll come back to this in Genesis 9, but I'll show this here in Genesis 10 about the children of Shem. And even Japheth here, when talking about the Medes, they come from Japheth's son, Madai. All right, that's where the Medes come from. All right, we'll deal with that a little later. But as far as the Semites or the Shemites, all right, it says this is verse 22, the children of Shem, or at least the first mentioned, right? So you would assume the firstborn, Elam, all right, is the first Shemitic people mentioned. All right, Elam became the father of the Persians. I just shown Elam on a map in what is now southwestern Iran. All right, this is where, like I said, the Persian people come from. All right, but when you start getting into like Jiroft, that would be one of the children of Joktan. I mean, don't ask me which one. Probably Jirah, if I had to guess. All right. It said children. Let's look at Arphaxad real quick. It said Arphaxad, this is verse 24, begot Salad. Salad begot Eber. And unto Eber were born 2 sons. The name of the one was Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided, right? So the Tower of Babel was in Peleg's days, and his brother's name was Joktan. All right, so Eber is where you get the term Hebrew from, right? Peleg was the chosen, where Abram come from later down the line. But Joktan is the other set of Hebrews who are not chosen, all right? It said, and Joktan begat Almadad and Shalef and Hazar Maveth and Jerah and Hadaram and Uzal and Diklah and Obal and Abimael and Sheba and Ophir and Havilah and Jobab. Right, so that would be over there when you get to Central and South Asia, concerning from like the Astani countries down into India. All right, so the Giraffe civilization was probably Jirah, if I had to guess. If it's the same name as was in ancient times, sometimes names get changed by. Historically, it was mostly the Greeks who changed people's names, but for other reasons as well, I'm sure. All right, but Ophir is India. All right, that's where the almond trees come from that Solomon went and got. All right, that would put Havilah around like Pakistan-ish type area. All right, so let's keep going in this. We'll jump down. I'll read this here when it says early Iron Age. All right. Records become more tangible with the rise of the Neo-Assyrian Empire. All right. And this is the Assyrians that you read about in the Bible, who ended up conquering Samaria, were not able to conquer Jerusalem. And it's records of incursions from the Iranian plateau. As early as the 20th century BC, right? So that would put around 2000 BC. Tribes came to the Iranian plateau from the Pontic Caspian steppe, right? So that would be like Medes coming down, Japhet coming down, right? The arrival of Iranians on the Iranian plateau forced the Elamites to relinquish one area of their empire after another and to take refuge in Elam. You see that right there? So these Japhetic peoples came down to live with the Elamites, all right? Khuzestan and the nearby area, which only then became coterminous with Elam. All right, Bahman Ferozmandi says that the southern Iranians might be intermixed with the Elamite peoples living in the plateau, right? So you have the Japhetic people and the Persian people, right? You have the Medes and the Persians, all right? By the mid-first millennium BC, so that would be like the 500s, Medes, Persians, and Parthians, right? Parthians would be like that Joktan people over in the east, populated the Iranian plateau. Until the rise of the Medes, they all remained under Assyrian domination like the rest of the Near East. In the first half of the first millennium BC, parts of what is now Iranian Azerbaijan were incorporated into the Urartu, right? So that's more Medes, right? I'm not necessarily going to get into all of this history, all right? I'll read a little bit of that just so we can get some biblical context. But first, I want to get this here in Genesis 9, all right? Because what we just read was the fulfilling of Bible prophecy. That early Iron Age, when you had these Japhetic peoples go down there to live with the Elamites, live in their lands, all right? This is Genesis 9. Jumping down to, I'll jump down to verse 27, because this is the point, this is the prophecy that I wanted to get to. God shall enlarge Japhet, right? So God enlarged Japhet with the Median part of the Medo-Persian Empire, all right? Historically and secularly, they will say the Median Empire was different from the Achaemenid Empire, but it was really the same thing. They coexisted. And he shall dwell in the tents of Shem. He dwelled in the tents of Elam. We just read that, all right? Historically. And Canaan shall be his servant, right? So they ended up taking over the whole world from India to Ethiopia at the time, but especially the Canaanites, right? They took over the Phoenicians and whatnot, all right? If you wanted to do any Mediterranean trade at the time, you had to go through the Persians, right? Because they ruled all of that. They ruled, again, everything from India to Ethiopia, right? So if you want to do any trade throughout the Indian Ocean as well, you had to go to them, all right? But anyway, let's keep on reading. This is artifacts from the Median and Achaemenid empires, the Achaemenid, and I'm probably butchering all of these words that I'm saying, so y'all forgive me. But the Achaemenids are the Persians, right? Same thing. In 646 BC, Assyrian king, Ashurbanipal sacked Susa, right? Took over the Elamite region, which ended Elamite supremacy in the region. For over 150 years, Assyrian kings of nearby northern Mesopotamia had been wanting to conquer Median tribes of western Iran. Under pressure from Assyria, the small kingdoms of the western Iranian plateau coalesced into increasingly larger and more centralized states. In the second half of the 7th century BC, the Medes gained their independence and were united by dioceses. In 612 BC, Cyaxares, Dioceses, and again, I'm butchering these names, grandson, and the Babylonian king Nabopolassar invaded Assyria and laid siege to and eventually destroyed Nineveh, the Assyrian capital, which led to the fall of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, right? So just like Jonah prophesied what happened, right? When Jonah went there and prophesied against them, yeah, they humbled themselves down. But guess what? They went back to their wickedness, all right? And the city still fell, just like Tobit knew it would, all right? When you read the book of Tobit, all right? So you to take down the Assyrians, because the Assyrians were mighty fierce people, right? Fierce warriors, mighty warriors. They took over everybody in the region, in the Mesopotamian region. So it had to be a coalition of Babylonians, Medes, and Persians to take them down, all right? But in that power vacuum, up steps the Babylonians to rule, all right? Who eventually sacked Jerusalem, right? Took the people captive and whatnot. But let's keep reading. Urartu was later on conquered and dissolved as well by the Medes. You see that right there, conquered by the Medes. The Medes are credited with founding Iran as a nation and empire and established the first Iranian empire, the largest of its day, until Cyrus the Great established a unified empire of the Medes and Persians, leading to the Achaemenid Empire from 550 to 330 BC, right? So Cyrus the Great is credited with being the first Medo-Persian king, all right? Or it wouldn't say king, it'd say like emperor or whatever. But Cyrus the Great overthrew in turn the Median, Lydian, and Neo-Babylonian empires, creating an empire far larger than Assyria. He was better able, through more benign policies, to reconcile his subjects to Persian rule. The longevity of his empire was one result. The Persian king, like the Assyrian, was also king of kings, was what they called him. All right, great king, Megas Basileus, as known by the Greeks. All right, so Cyrus, instead of being a cruel and vicious overlord like the Assyrians were, because the Assyrians did have more rule, or excuse me, more territory than the Babylonians ever did. All right, but they got it through cruelty, through being mighty and fierce warriors. All right, Cyrus said, "I can use a little wisdom here. I can use a little diplomacy." All right, because in Cyrus's early years, he was counseled by Daniel, and you read about that in Bel and the Dragon. All right. So not saying Cyrus learned everything from Daniel, but he certainly learned a lot. All right. But it was and it doesn't really say it here, unfortunately, but it was the coalition that between the Medes and the Persians that was able to overthrow Babylon. All right. And we get that in the scriptures. It kind of references it here about the coalition between the Medes and the Persians, but it just kind of says that Cyrus overthrew everybody, right? Which, yeah, he did, but, it was the coalition that actually did it, all right? So from there, I'll go ahead and get that scripture. Let's go ahead and get that scripture. And that would be Isaiah 21, all right? This is prophecy, which even secular historians can't explain this away, because they say that this is proto-Isaiah, right? But it's still prophesying things that happened centuries after this was written, all right? In Isaiah 21, all right? I'll start with one. It says, "The burden of the desert of the sea, as whirlwinds in the south pass through, so it cometh from the desert, from a terrible land. A grievous vision is declared unto me. The treacherous dealer dealeth treacherously," right? And as we was going through Isaiah, you read that a lot as far as the treacherous dealer dealing treacherously, all right? Isaiah was prophesying the fall of all these different nations because of their sins, all right? "And the spoiler spoileth. Go up, O Elam," right? The biblical name for the Persians. "Besiege, O Media. All the sighing thereof have I made to cease," right? So he specifically calls the Persians and the Medes, jumping down. Where are we at here? Where's the scripture I'm looking for? Here we go. Verse 9. I guess I'll start with 8. "And he cried, A lion, my Lord. I stand continually upon the watchtower in the daytime, and I am set in my ward whole nights," right? Watching for this judgment that's coming, watching for this destruction that's coming. "And behold, here cometh a chariot of men with a couple of horsemen. And he answered and said, Babylon is fallen, and all the graven images of her gods he hath broken unto the ground. O my threshing and the corn of my floor, that which I have heard of the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, have I declared unto you. Right? So before Babylon ever even rose to power, Isaiah was prophesying of its demise by the hands of the Persians and the Medes, right? The Iranians. All right? Western Iranians. So from there, it just talks about how they ended up conquering pretty much everything, all right? With the capital being at Susa or Shushan. So let's keep going. Not necessarily going to get into like the fall under the Greeks. Though the Parthian Empire is interesting. Not going to get into that either. Or even the Sasanian Empire. All right. I'm just going to skip to like when the Muslims took Persia. All right. So it says the Islamic conquest of Persia from 633 to 651. This is shortly after Islam was created in the 600s by Muhammad. In 633, immediately following a civil war and during the reign of Sasanian king Yazdegerd III, the Muslims under Umar invaded Iran. Several Iranian nobles and families such as King Dinar of the House of Karin and later Kanarangians of Khorasan, and again, I'm butchering these names, mutinied against their Sasanian overlords. Although the House of Miran had claimed the Sasanian throne under the two prominent generals, Bahram Chobin and Shahbaraz, it remained loyal to the Sasanians during its struggle against the Arabs. But the Mirans were eventually betrayed and defeated by their own kinsmen, the House of Ispabudan, under their leader Farrukhzad, who had mutinied against Yazdegerd III. Yazdegerd III fled from one district to another until a local miller killed him for his purse at Merv in 651. By 674, Muslims had conquered Khorasan, which included Khorasan province and modern Afghanistan and parts of Transoxiana. Transoxiana would be like where all the Istani countries are north of Afghanistan. All right. But I do just want to point out that, these Muslims, these are Arab Muslims. The Arab Muslims came into the country of, this is the first time that they were able to move into Iran like this. All right. Because the Arabs themselves, all right, they pretty much hung out in Arabia, never really being fully unified, a little bit under the Nabateans, but not nowhere near the way that they got unified under Muhammad and Islam. All right, that's when the Arabs were truly able to conquer everything that you see here from like Pakistan and Mauritania. All right, and even this shows even on up into Spain and Portugal, but that was mostly the Moors who went up in there. There were the Islamic Moors who did that. But let me just show before, because I forgot to bring this out. During the Assyrian reign, which, the fall of Samaria was, 700s BC, right? The later part of the 8th century. So after 722 BC, I believe is when Samaria fell. You had the Israelites first being placed in the cities of Iran, in the cities of the Medes. All right. So, I'll start with one here. It says, in the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, began, this is verse 1 in 2 Kings 17, began Hoshea, the son of Elah, not Elam, but Elah was Hoshea's dad. All right, Hoshea being the last king over Samaria, to reign in Samaria over Israel 9 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, but not as the kings of Israel that were before him, right? So he wasn't as bad as, say, like Ahab or whatever. All right. Against him came up Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, and I believe this is Shalmaneser the fifth. And Hoshea became his servant and gave him presents, right? Give him tribute, give him taxes. And the king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hoshea, for he had sent messengers to So, king of Egypt, and brought no present to the king of Assyria, as he had done year by year. Therefore the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. All right. So the northern kingdom fell by trusting in Egypt. All right. You had the southern kingdom in Jerusalem do the same thing, like a century later. It would have been a century and a half later, actually. 150 years later, or thereabout. Therefore, the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land They went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria, took Samaria and carried Israel away into Assyria and placed them in Halah and in Habor by the river of Gozan in the cities of the Medes. Right? So he placed the Israelites in what is now, I guess, northwestern Iran, or like just western Iran in general, depending on where these cities are. I believe it's northwestern Iran. All right. But regardless, that's when you had Israelites first entered the country. So now we have in the west of Iran the Medes, the Israelites, and the Elamites. All right, in Iran, and in the east you start getting to like the children of Joktan over there in the east. But then 600 years after Christ, you have the Arabs starting to move in. All right. It says the Muslim conquest of Persia ended the Sasanian Empire and led to the eventual decline of the Zoroastrian religion in Persia. Over time, the majority of Iranians converted to Islam. Most of the aspects of the previous Persian civilizations were not discarded, but were absorbed by the new Islamic polity. Right. So even though you had the Arabs come in and you know start to take over everything, the Persians didn't really change their culture. They may have changed their religion in name, but they really kept their culture. Right. They didn't really change too much about themselves. They just started calling themselves Muslims. All right. So as Bernard Lewis has commented, these events have been variously seen in Iran by some as a blessing, the advent of the true faith, the end of the age of ignorance and heathenism, by others as a humiliating national defeat, the conquest and subjugation of the country by foreign invaders. Both perceptions are, of course, valid depending on one's angle of vision. Right? So he said some really liked that this happened and said, you know, that we really like Islam, and others were like, no, we ain't doing all that. We don't. This was humiliating. All right, that the Arabs were able to come in and conquer everybody. So it says after the fall of the Sasanian Empire in 651, the Arabs of the Umayyad Caliphate adopted many Persian customs. Right, so the Arabs who moved there were like, hey, look, we're Persian too. Especially the administrative and the court mannerisms. Arab provincial governors were undoubtedly either Persianized Arameans or ethnic Persians. Certainly Persian remained the language of the official business of the Caliphate until the adoption of Arabic toward the end of the 7th century. Right, so I'll finish out this little paragraph. When in 692, minting began at the capital of Damascus, because again, the Arabs taking over everything at this point. So, you know, they're shipping out their coins to Iran now, to Persia. The Islamic coins evolved from imitations of Sasanian coins as well as Byzantine, and the Pahlavi script on the coinage was replaced with Arabic alphabet. You see that right there. So now you not only have the Medes, Persians, and Israelites in Iran, now you got the Arabs there too, right? And then you have the children of Joktan out to the east, all right? But it was at this point when, you know, Ishmael started his whole empire, right? Where he took over everything from Pakistan to Mauritania, essentially, all right? So I do just want to point that out. In Genesis 16, I believe it's Genesis 16, where it said he will be in the presence of all his brethren. When it's talking about Ishmael, I could be mistaken. That could be later on. All right, but I think it's in Genesis 16 when it first talks about Ishmael. Let's see. Yes. So this is Sarah's mistress, or at the time it's Sarai, but later known as Sarah, mistress Hagar. All right, Abraham was able to have a child with her, right? So Abraham was always fruitful. It was Sarah who was barren, all right? And the angel of the Lord said unto her, right? So Sarah is pretty much, I ain't gonna necessarily put it all on Sarah, but Hagar is starting to think she's not a servant, right? She's starting to think, well, I'm better than Sarah because I can have a child for Abraham and she can't. Right, so Sarah started dealing roughly with her, started vexing her a bit. Hagar run off, and the angel of the Lord said unto her, so this is the angel speaking unto Hagar. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shalt call his name Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard thy affliction. Right, so that is God is heard. Right, similar to Samuel, it's just switched around a bit. All right. And he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, right? So Ishmael is a wild man because, you know, he'll be like a suicide bomber, right? He's wild in that regard. He'll do whatever, whenever. He'll switch up on you, right? Because the Saudis will do business with the Russians and then turn right around and do business with the U.S., right? And they'll flip flop back and forth, all right? They don't care. They wild. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, right? The Islamic terror that swept the nation here in the I guess late 1900s, early 2000s, mid 2000s, right? The Islamic terror. And he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren, right? So that's the point that I wanted to get to, all right? These Ishmaelites would dwell in the presence of all the different Shemites, all the different Shemitic people, right? Not just, his brethren, the children of Midian or the children of Israel, right? Brethren of Abraham's seed, but also his Shemitic brethren, right? The Shemite Elamites, the even Hebrew Jokhtanites, right? So he's dwelling in the presence of all his brethren, all right? So I just wanted to get that about Ishmael taking over everything from Pakistan to Mauritania, essentially. All right. So I'm gonna jump down. So now again, we got at least 5 different races of people in Iran at this point, right? Because you got the Persians and the Medes, right? The Elamites, the Medes who are of Madai, the Japhetic people. Then you have the Israelites who came in, around the latter part of the 8th century BC. Then you have the Jokhtanites were always out there in the east from, the time that Elam was out there as well, or a little bit after Elam, perhaps. But then now you have the Arabs come in 600 years after Christ, right? After Christ and the apostles, right? AD, excuse me, AD 600-ish, 700. All right. So from that point, later you had the Mongols even come in, but they didn't really stick around too long. You might still have some Mongolian people around Iran, but not many. All right. So that would be the medieval period that I'm in here. Talk about the Mongols. All right. Then I looked a little bit here into the Islamic Golden Age. I'm not necessarily going to go into that because we're already approaching 9 o'clock. But it was during this, I guess I'll read it a little bit. Islamization was a long process by which Islam was gradually adopted by the majority of the population of Iran. Richard Bulliet's conversion curve indicates that only about 10% of Iran converted to Islam during the relatively Arab-centric Umayyad period, right? Because when the Arabs come in, people were like, I ain't trying to convert to y'all's religion, right? Beginning in the Abbasid period, with its mix of Persian as well as Arab rulers, the Muslim percentage of the population rose, right? So I'll read this next sentence. It says, Persian Muslims consolidated the rule of the country. The Muslim population rose from approximately 40% in the mid-9th century to close to 90% by the end of the 11th century, right? So by the time you had Persian rulers, you had Elamite rulers that were Muslim, you had people starting to come around a little bit, all right? But let me keep going down. Not really going to get into the Mongols. They come in a little bit. The Timurids are interesting. All right. But I'll start here. Sunni and Shiite, right? The difference and how. I'm not necessarily even going to get into the difference of them because one is like you believe a certain person should be the successor of Muhammad, and you believe another one, right? So that would be the difference, right? Is like who you believe should have been the successor to Muhammad is the difference in Sunnis and Shiites, basically. There's some cultural differences and some religious differences in like how they practice and whatnot, but that's essentially the main differences. But you had mostly Sunnis originally, but they're now Shiites based on the Safavids, all right, by Ishmael the First, right? When you had Ishmaelites take over Iran religiously and culturally when they come back to power with the Safavids, all right, you had that's when you had like the Shiites really become the official, as it says here, the main change occurred in the beginning of the 16th century, the beginning of the 1500s. That was the main time, and we're about to get into what led up to that. when Ismail the First, right, Ishmaelite, founded the Safavid dynasty and initiated a religious policy to recognize Shia Islam as the official religion of the Safavid Empire, right? So the Safavids are the ones who made Iran Shiite. And the fact that modern Iran remains an officially Shiite state is a direct result of Ismail's actions, right? Ismail is just another way of saying Ishmael, all right? But the Timurids are very interesting, as it says 1370 to 1507. Iran remained divided until the arrival of Timur, a Turco-Mongol belonging to the Timurid dynasty, right? So when they say Turco-Mongol, all right, when it starts mentioning the peoples of like, and you look into like the ethnicity, I just want to pull up a map here of Central Asia, right? Those countries that are east of Iran. Let me just pull those up real quick. Pictures, maps. Let me just explain something real quick concerning these countries. It might be easier on an Asia map, but let me just pull up Peter's projection real quick. I'm not using that one. It's more accurate to like land size and things like that. All right. So let me move this in a place y'all can see it. All right. So zoom in a little bit. I know it's a little blurry, but y'all bear with me. When you start talking about, like, obviously here's Iran, all right? If you didn't know where it was at. Then east of Iran, you got Kazakh and I can't even read that. Turkmenistan, you got Uzbekistan somewhere. Turkmenistan, oh yeah, Turkmenistan over here. What was I saying? Yeah, that's Uzbek right here. Uzbek right here. You got obviously you got Afghanistan. We start talking about all these Istani countries right here. Tajikistan was another one. We start talking about all the Istani countries. There's a lot of different, I ain't gonna say a lot, but there's several different races in every single one of them, in every single one of those countries, right? And when you start talking about, because again, you look into who these people are and they say like a Turkic Iranic people, all right? When they start saying stuff like that, the Turks didn't go all the way over there. The Turks did not go all the way over there in the east, all right? The reason why they say Turkic Iranic people is because that's Israelites out there who moved from, maybe they got some Turkic culture, maybe they got some Median culture, and they just moved further east, all right? So when they start saying like, oh, that's a Turkic people, no, those are Israelites out there, all right? And of course, you have the like children of Joktan that are out that far too, right? So you start getting into like a lot of different ethnicities out in those Istani countries, right? And once you get further down into like Afghanistan, it's mostly Pashto, mostly Israelite, all right? So when it says Turco-Mongol, that's just saying it was an Israelite mixed with the Mongolians. That's all that's saying, all right? There was an Asian-looking, Asian mixed Israelite is Timur, all right? It said Iran remained divided until the arrival of Timur, a Turco-Mongol belonging to the Timurid dynasty. Like its predecessors, the Timurid Empire was also part of the Persian Eight world. And this thing keeps going off. I got to put it on silent. Y'all bear with me. I thought it was already on silent, and I guess it is. It's just vibrating. Okay. Everything's well. I just had to make sure it was no like emergency. But anyway. So talking about Timur here, it says, after establishing a power base in Transoxiana is just those lands that I just described, all those Istani countries. Timur invaded Iran in 1381. So keep in mind where the world was at this time. In 1381, the Israelites are still in power in Europe and parts of Africa and America. All right. And eventually conquered most of it. Timur's campaigns were known for their brutality. Many people were slaughtered and several cities were destroyed. So y'all keep this in mind. Just because I say, well, this person was an Israelite, that doesn't mean that they were a good person, especially in the Middle Ages. All right? The Middle Ages was full of wicked and evil Israelites ruling. That's why that rulership did not continue. All right? But anyway, it says his regime was characterized by tyranny and bloodshed, but also by its inclusion of Iranians in administrative roles and its promotion of architecture and poetry. His successors, the Timurids, maintained a hold on most of Iran until 1452. All right? Notice that year was 1 year before the fall of Constantinople in 1453. It was around that time, from the mid to late 1400s, all the way up until 1800s, 1900s, when Israelites, were taken over, right? Were colonized and enslaved, and when you look in like Europe, for example, were inquisitioned, right? Deported, all right. So that year 1453, and this being a year before that, right? That whole century of the 1400s was the beginning of the fall of Israelites in rulership everywhere, including Iran. All right, when they lost the bulk of it to Black Sheep Turkmen, the Black Sheep Turkmen were conquered by the White Sheep Turkmen under Uzun Hasan in 1468. All right, so from there, and of course, this is the Safavids. We read about them, briefly under Ishmael. There's Ishmael taking the country back in 1501, and they ruled until 1736. The Safavids specifically. All right, let's keep going down. I really just want to get to the more modern era. It says the Pahlavi era. So let me start here. Talking about World War II, because in World War II, and I'm just going to briefly mention it. I'm not going to necessarily get into it, but in World War II, you had the British and the Russians who both wanted to take over Iran, so the Iranians sided with the Germans. All right, and obviously we know that Germany did not win World War II, so that did not look good for the Iranians. Right, they picked the losing side in World War II. All right. So I'll pick up here with Mohammad Reza Shah. Initially, there were hopes that post-occupation Iran could become a constitutional monarchy. The new young Shah, Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, this guy right here, initially took a very hands-off role in government and allowed parliament to hold a lot of power. Some elections were held in the first shaky years, although they remained mired in corruption. Parliament became chronically unstable from the 1947 to 1951 period. Iran saw the rise and fall of 6 different prime ministers. Pahlavi increased his political power by convening the Iran Constituent Assembly of 1949, which finally formed the Senate of Iran, a legislative upper house allowed for in the 1906 Constitution, but never brought into being. The new senators were largely supportive of Pahlavi as he had intended, right? So Pahlavi, the Shah, was just trying to make sure he stayed in power. He didn't really care about anything concerning politics or concerning the people. He just wanted to stay in power. In 51, Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, all right, so keep this guy in mind, received the vote required from the parliament to nationalize the British-owned oil industry in a situation known as the Abadan Crisis, right? So Mossadegh said, hey, the British are coming and taking all our oil and the people aren't receiving anything from it. We should take this as a people, right? We should take back our oil and sell it ourselves, all right? Of course, the British didn't like that. Despite British pressure, including an economic blockade, the nationalization continued. Mossadegh was briefly removed from power in 52, but was quickly reappointed by the Shah due to popular uprising in support of the premier, and he in turn forced the Shah into a brief exile in 53 after a failed military coup by Imperial Guard Colonel Nematollah Nasiri. Right? So Mossadegh, obviously he got the vote from the people, but the Shah's trying to take him out of power and then brought him back, and you got all this going on. Now the Shah has to flee, right? Shortly thereafter, on August 19th, a successful coup was headed by retired Army General Fazlollah Zahedi, aided by the U.S. CIA with the active support of the British MI6, known as Operation Ajax and Operation Boot, to the respective agencies. All right, so you had the CIA right? The Americans and the British come in and say, well, no, we like the Shah better. We don't like this Mossadegh guy because he does not suit our business interests. We want to do business, but Mossadegh don't want to do business. All right. The coup with a black propaganda campaign designed to turn the population against Mossadegh, forced Mossadegh from office. Mossadegh was arrested and tried for treason. Found guilty, his sentence was reduced to house arrest on his family estate, while his foreign minister, Hossein Fatemi, was executed. Zahedi succeeded him as prime minister and suppressed opposition to the Shah, specifically the National Front and Communist Tudeh Party. Right, so hey, bring back the Shah. He'll do business with us. All right, that's what the CIA and MI6 said. All right, get rid of this Mossadegh guy. Keep him on house arrest. We won't kill him, but keep him on house arrest. Keep him out of office. Keep him out of the government. Get rid of all this communism, right, as the CIA was known to do. Iran was ruled as an autocracy under the Shah with American support from that time until the revolution. The Iranian government entered into agreement with an international consortium of foreign companies which ran the Iranian oil facilities for the next 25 years, splitting profits 50-50 with Iran, but not allowing Iran to audit their accounts or have members on their board of directors, right? So completely, as it just said, foreign companies coming in and, just taking over the oil, all right? Taking over oil production. They said, you can have some of them. You can have half of the money, half of the profits, but we're going to take the other half, and y'all don't have a say in anything, all right? So let's see. Let's just jump to, all this is kind of important. So yeah, I'll read through this quickly. In 1957, martial law was ended after 16 years and Iran became closer to the West, joining the Baghdad Pact and receiving military and economic aid from the U.S. In 1961, Iran initiated a series of economic, social, agrarian, and administrative reforms to modernize the country that became known as the Shah's White Revolution. The core of this program was land reform. Modernization and economic growth proceeded at an unprecedented rate, right? So this, as it says, modernization and economic growth. When you do business with the U.S. gives you money, right? So that's what happened. Right? When it says modernization, it means like it became more like the U.S. It became more like Britain, right? Because you're doing business with these people. The culture from America, from Britain, came to Iran. All right. Fueled by Iran's vast petroleum reserves, the third largest in the world. However, the reforms, including the White Revolution, did not greatly improve economic conditions, and the liberal pro-Western policies alienated certain Islamic religious and political groups. Right. So the people of Iran said, "We don't really like this. We don't like this. We want the first of all, we want the money from our oil, right? We don't want to give that away, but also we want to be more Islamic, right? This modernization, the worship of money. We don't like that. We like Islam better, all right? In early 1963, several days of massive rioting occurred in support of Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. All right, so from what I understand, Khomeini and Khamenei, that comes later, as we're about to read about. I don't know if they're related or not. You would think they would be, but their names are slightly different. I didn't see any relation. Maybe I'm not digging enough because I didn't really dig into it. I was just kind of looking, and I didn't see any true relation, or at least initially. Maybe there is. I don't know. But names are very similar, you would think. Following the cleric's arrest for speech attacking the Shah, right? So the Muslims got behind this Ayatollah, right, the Muslim leader, Ruhollah Khomeini, all right, after he got arrested for his speech. 2 years later, Premier Hassan Ali Mansour was assassinated, and the internal security service, Sabbath, became more violently active. In the 70s, leftist guerrilla groups such as Mujahideen emerged and contributed to overthrowing the Shah during the 1979 Iranian Revolution. All right, so that 1979 revolution pretty much led to the country of Iran today. All right, so jumping down, because they had a war in 73, or excuse me, the Arabs and the Israelis had a war in 73. That's the same year the Shah returned the oil industry to national control. All right. I just want to jump down to where the Khomeini that was just killed takes over. Where is it at? I think after the hostage crisis. Yeah, here we go. On his deathbed in 89, right, so 10 years after that revolution, Khomeini appointed a 25-man constitutional reform council, which named then President Ali Khamenei as the next supreme leader, and made a number of changes to Iran's constitution. All right, so this Khamenei, who was just assassinated, had been in his position as supreme leader or religious leader since, since '89. All right. So and of course they changed presidents and whatnot with elections, but Khomeini was really the leader of the country. So with all that being said, let's get some prophecy, all right, concerning Iran and concerning what's going on over there currently, all right, because all that history, right, because I said it was, one of the oldest lands, one of the oldest places in the world, right? You got all these different races there, all right? At least 5 of them, could be more, all right? And all that built up as far as, especially what happened in the Middle Ages on into, you had the Timurids, led into the Safavids, led on up into the more modern era, all right, when you had business interests and whatnot, that that 1953 coup, or it could have been 52, but that coup in the 1950s really set the stage for the modern resentment that Iran has for the West, all right. Because it essentially went to go about to Americanize or Westernize one of the oldest Eastern countries in the world, and they didn't like that very much. 2 Ezra 15. Let's get this prophecy real quick, because I went through this prophecy a lot on here. Anytime when we start talking about tensions with Iran, Let's go ahead and read this. I'll start with 27 in 2 Ezra 15, starting with verse 27. For now are the plagues come upon the whole earth, and ye shall remain in them. Technically, we're still in the beginning of sorrows when you read Matthew 24. For God shall not deliver you because you have sinned against him. So understand that. If we keep God's commandments, he will deliver us. But if you sin against him, he won't deliver you. All right, beholding horrible vision, and the appearance thereof from the east. Where the nations of the dragons of Arabia shall come out with many chariots, and the multitude of them shall be carried as the wind upon earth, that all they which hear them may fear and tremble. Right? So everybody that hears Allahu Akbar, everybody's terrified, right? They're like, what? Somebody's about to blow up, right? Something's about to blow up, right? This is that Islamic terror, right? That happened, I guess, originally in the 90s. I think is when it really started. 2000s, obviously, it kicked off, majorly in the 2000s and in the 2010s. But the nation of the dragons of Arabia, all right. Originally, the Arabians, as I had mentioned earlier, were pretty much confined to Saudi Arabia. But then they, took everything in the 600s. They took everything from Mauritania to Pakistan, essentially. All right. Also, the Carmanians. Carmanian is another word for Iranian or Elam. All right. Or, obviously you got the Medes over there as well, but Carmanians raging in wrath shall go forth as the wild boars of the wood, and with great power shall they come and join battle with them, and shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians. Right? So they're going to do, they're going to waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians. From what I can tell, that has not happened yet. And looking like it may be Iraq, but let me just pull up, Map of Assyria. Where we got map? Here we go. So when it says a portion of the land of the Assyrians, all right, it could be this lighter green, but that's not what. All this doesn't really scream land of the Assyrians to me, right? Because this over here in the east is Iran, right? So they're not going to waste their own portion here. It could be Saudi though. You see right here, a lot of this is Saudi Arabia, and this here by the Persian Gulf, Kuwait. It could be that. We said a portion of the land of the Assyrians, right? But this even stretches into like Egypt and like the state of Israel, which I think if it was prophecy concerning like Egypt or the land of Israel, it wouldn't say a portion of the land of the Assyrians. It would specify a bit more. All right. So when it says a portion of the land of the Assyrians, I really assume, I could be wrong here, but I assume it's some of this darker green, right, which would be Iraq. It doesn't look like Turkey, maybe Syria, right? Because you see, like this would be Syria, this would be Iraq, right? And this is like modern like Turkey and stuff. So like I said, looking like Iraq. I don't necessarily think it could be Syria, but it might be. All right, a portion of the land of the Assyrians. Let's see. And then shall the dragons have the upper hand, right? The dragons of Arabia, remembering their nature, and if they shall turn themselves conspiring together in great power to persecute them, then these shall be troubled. And keep silence to their power and flee. And from the land of the Assyrians shall the enemy besiege them and consume some of them, and in their hosts shall be fear and dread and strife among their kings, right? So this war back and forth in the Middle East between Iran and this land of the Assyrians. And as I just described, could be Syria, could be Iraq. Technically, could be any of that light green as well, though. But it seems like this is more referencing modern day Syria or Iraq. Behold, clouds from the east, right? And there's a lot of, there's American military bases in Iraq, right? So it very well could be Iraq. Behold, clouds from the east and from the north and to the south, and they are very horrible to look upon, full of wrath and storm. So these clouds that it's talking about, these are when them nukes start popping off. These are missiles that it's talking about, because they leave a trail of smoke, right? So the prophet seeing this in a vision, right, and he sees smoke in the sky, right, and it looks like a cloud growing, all right. But he said these clouds are full of wrath and storm, all right. When they strike, it's vengeance, right? It's judgment. It's wasting everything. They shall smite one upon another, right? Because that's what we see when they shoot down missiles, right? It is one smiting upon another. And they shall smite down a great multitude of stars upon the earth, and even their own star, and blood shall be from the sword into the bellies, right? So even their own star. These stars are, things in the sky, right? You could say planes, but it's more like satellites, all right? Instead of a great multitude of stars, all right? So all this popping off, firing off, I don't believe we've completely fulfilled this prophecy yet, because it's not, they haven't wasted a portion of the land of the Assyrians quite yet, all right? But that's why they're so scared of them getting nukes, right? Because the prophecy calls nukes wasters, right? In Isaiah 54, all right? So they read this prophecy. When I say they, I'm talking about Trump and Bibi and all of them, and their counselors, their astrologers and monthly prognosticators and whatever you want to call them. When they read waste, they think nuke, all right? Which that's not a bad interpretation either, all right? They know these scriptures. That's why they're targeting Iran so much. That's why they say, because they haven't said China can't have nukes. They haven't said Russia can't have nukes. They haven't said the state of Israel can't have nukes. Because they know the prophecy is that the Carmanians would really pop this off. The Iranians would really pop this off. All right? And it said, in the dung of men let me read this. It said, blood shall be from the sword unto the belly, and dung of men unto the camels. I think it's could be Huff. Might be Huff. But that would be like the the underside of a camel, right? Like the underside of a camel's leg, like the thigh region of a camel. All right. But yeah, blood from the sword into the belly, right? So blood all the way up to here, right? Up to the belly up here. And it said dung of men into the camel's hoe, which would be like up here, right? And it says dung of men because that's like you void your bowels when you die, right? So that's what this is going into, all right? And then, and there shall be great fearfulness and trembling upon earth, and they that see the wrath shall be afraid, and trembling shall come upon them. Everybody's going to be worried. Oh, is this how it ends? Oh, is this Armageddon? Yeah. Yeah. There's that World War III. And then it says, and then shall there come great storms from the south and from the north and another part from the west. Right? So from all over. Missiles shooting and coming from all over. From the west, from the south, from the north, right? Everybody's getting involved. All right? It says, and strong winds shall arise from the east and shall open it. Right? Shall open up the east into this war as well. Get China involved. All right? And the cloud which he raised up in wrath and the stars stirred to cause fear toward the east and west wind shall be destroyed. All right? So, it goes on. It goes on to just talk about how this war escalates. But I'm not necessarily going to get into that because, we've already been like an hour and a half. But let me go ahead and get Revelation 16. Again, I just want to point this out. It's been a while since I read it, so I need to show it to y'all again. All right? Because Revelation 16, I want to get that specifically because it talks about this war, but it also talks about what we should do. We who truly want to follow Christ. What should we do? All right? Who sincerely want to follow the Lord. What should we do when we see all this popping off? All right? Revelation chapter 16. Let's get to the point down here. 12. 12. The sixth angel. This is where we're at. We're in the sixth seal. All right. And I guess this is like, when you start getting into this part of Revelation, it's trumpets, but it's the same thing. And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. Right. So the water dried up. All right, the water is drying up currently in the Euphrates. I don't think it's completely dry just yet, but just about. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. Right, so, right, they said 3 unclean spirits because you got 3 speakers here: the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. Right, false prophet would be their religion, their whole CBN, their whole TBN. Right? Every like pro-Zionist Christian who said we need to be with the state of Israel because that's God's people. That's not God's people. That's unclean spirits that's coming out your mouth. Right? You lying on God. All right. The dragon, in this context, would be like like Europe. All right, pro-Israel Europe have been for a very long time. Now they're starting to change up. Right? But the beast would be like that second beast would be America. All right, the second beast in Revelation 13. For they are the spirits of devils working miracles. Right? Well, they even have a word for that. The miracles of modern science is what they say. All right. And I brought out on one of these lessons before where you had the left and the right pundits, right? People who are conservatives and people who are leftists, talking about how the Iron Dome is miraculous, right? Which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. That's what it's all boiling down to. It says here Armageddon, as we're about to read. Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth and keepeth his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. Let's get these garments. What is these garments? All right, let's read this here about the garments that you read about in Revelation chapter 19. All right, or excuse me, that was kind of a Freudian slip there because I know it says it in Revelation 19 as well. I think it's Revelation 19 and 11. Could be mistaken. Maybe it's 19 and 9. Let's read this real quick. About the garments. 19 and 8. It says, and to her was granted that she should be arrayed in fine linen, clean and white, for the fine linen is the righteousness of saints. All right, that's the fine linen, is the righteousness of saints. That's the garments. Let's get that in the Old Testament prophets as well, because they all the prophets saw the same thing and used similar metaphors. All right, because you have one prophet who started a metaphor, and then especially in the New Testament, you have Christ or one of the apostles expound upon that. All right, in Isaiah 61 and verse 10, when talking about the garments. All right, Isaiah 61 and 10, it says, I will greatly rejoice in the Lord. My soul shall be joyful in my God, for he hath clothed me with the garments of salvation. He hath covered me with the robe of righteousness. All right. As a bridegroom decketh herself with ornaments, and as a bride adorneth herself with her jewels. So again, we have righteousness, right? The fine linen is the righteousness of saints. He covered me with a robe of righteousness. Let's just get righteousness if y'all are unfamiliar with what righteousness is. All right. Because maybe you think being righteous is, just generally doing things you think are good. That's not what righteousness is, right? It may be nice to help an old lady cross the street, but that's not what righteousness is, all right? That might be kind, but that's not what righteousness is. In Psalms 119, verse 172, this is what righteousness is, all right? It says, my tongue shall speak of thy word, for all thy commandments are righteousness, right? So the commandments of God, that's righteousness, right? So like you can help an old lady across the street, but if you still eat pork, for example, then you're not doing righteousness. You're not doing righteousness, all right? Again, you can help an old lady across the street, but if you celebrate Christmas instead of Hanukkah, or celebrate Easter instead of the Passover, then you're still not doing righteousness. It doesn't matter how many old ladies you help cross the street, help them with their groceries or whatever. You know what I mean? God's commandments are righteousness, right? So the fine linen, the garments, the robes, right? That he's talking about in Revelation 16. That's the commandments of God, all right? So when Christ said, or this angel, I suppose, excuse me. It says, behold, I come as a thief, right? This is Christ. Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth, right? So that's why I got to point out these things that are happening. Because it says, we're blessed if we watch. And keepeth his garments, lest he walk naked, and they see his shame, right? The same way that Aaron had made the people naked to their shame when he built them a golden calf, right? When he led the people into false religions, he led the people into idolatries. That was a shame to them, right? They were made naked because they lost their garments. They lost their righteousness. And he gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue, Armageddon, right? So Armageddon isn't a time or an event. It's a place, all right? It's the Valley of Megiddo, just north of the West Bank in Israel, all right? So with all of that being said, hope y'all learned something. A little bit long tonight because when it comes to the history of Iran, there's a lot there because it's one of the oldest civilizations ever. All right, the Elamites, they've been around. That was perhaps the firstborn son of Shem was Elam, but at least one of his sons, right? So immediately post flood, they started up that civilization, all right, in Iran. So Matthew 26, I'll start with verse 6. Now when Jesus was in Bethany, in the house of Simon the leper, there came unto him a woman having an alabaster box of very precious ointment, and poured it on his head as he sat at meat. But when his disciples saw it, they had indignation, saying, to what purpose is this waste? For this ointment might have been sold for much and given to the poor. When Jesus understood it, he said unto them, why trouble ye the woman? For she hath wrought a good work upon me. For ye have the poor always with you, but me ye have not always. For in that she hath poured this ointment on my body, she did it for my burial. Verily I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached in the whole world, there shall also this that this woman hath done be told for a memorial of her. So all praises to the Most High for that sister doing a wonderful thing for our Lord. All right. So we keep that memorial as he commanded us to do. All right. I know these classes, these lessons go all across the world. So with that, I just want to close out by giving all praise, honor, and glory to the Heavenly Father. I do so in the name of his only begotten Son, and I do so by his Holy Ghost. With all that, I'm going to say shalom, happy Sabbath, and let God be magnified.